Okay, students, so on the past couple of lessons we've been talking about slope and graphing lines, but today we're going to graph linear equations from the intercepts. Okay, so what I'd like for you to do is take your notes page and fold it up just a little bit to right there, because I want to take a few notes on the back before we actually start. So let's draw a simple y-axis and an x-axis, and we'll put arrows, well that's a bad arrow, on it. And then I'm going to take a different color and I'm going to draw a line. And it doesn't matter where this line is, I'm going to draw the line right there. Okay? And when we talk about intercepts, we know we have an x-intercept and a y-intercept. And the x-intercept is where the line crosses the x-axis, and the y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. So let's talk about the x-intercept. X-intercept, we could call this as the ordered pair x, comma, 0. Because we know we go across the x number of points and then the second number is 0. Okay, so for the x-intercept, we know, I'm going to put an arrow, that y equals 0. That's going to be important for later. Now for the y-intercept, we could label this point 0, comma, y. Because we're not going left or right from the origin, we're just going to go straight down, so we don't go across any, and we just go down to y, or up to y, whichever way. Okay? So with the y-intercept, we know that x equals 0. So when we are trying to graph a line with the y-intercept and the x-intercept, let's say we're given the equation 2x plus 3y equals 6. That's the equation of the line. It looks a little bit different than slope-intercept form. This is what we call standard form, but we'll get to all of that later. But if I'm given the equation of the line and I want to graph it, I can't find the y-intercept and the slope from this little portion right here, because the equation is not solved for y. But I can figure out what the intercepts are. So let's start with the x-intercept. I'm going to start with the x-intercept. I know that y equals 0, so I'm going to just rewrite this plus 3 times 0 equals 6. And so that means 2x plus 0 equals 6. That's just 2x equals 6, so x equals 3. I just solved the equation because I plugged in 0 for the y to find the x value for this equation. Now, just know that this equation is not this line right here. They're two very different things, so I'll put a squiggly there. Okay? So, I know that the x-intercept is 3. Now let's figure out the y-intercept for that same equation. So I'm going to use a different color. I'm going to use 2x plus 3y equals 6. And now, because I'm going to find the y-intercept, I know that x equals 0. So I am going to plug in 0 for x plus 3y equals 6. And then 0 plus 3y equals 6. The 0 we don't need, so we know that y equals 2. So the y-intercept is 2, and the x-intercept is 3. So I'm going to go to my coordinate plane. I'm going to draw a new one. I'm going to go to the x-intercept of 3, 1, 2, 3, put a dot right there. And I know that the y-intercept is 2, 1, 2, and because I'm graphing with intercepts, I just have to have 2 points on the line. So I get my handy dandy ruler, I draw a line, I put arrows, and there is the line. So the first trick is finding actually what the y-intercept and the x-intercept are, then graphing those 2 points on the graph and drawing the line. So now that we have that information, we're going to go back to the front, and I'm going to give you a couple of equations that we're going to graph. The first one is going to be 3x plus 5y equals negative 15. It's an equation of a line, 3x plus 5y equals negative 15. So the first thing that we have to do is to find the x-intercept and the y-intercept. I want to give you a hint. We know that for the x-intercept, y equals 0. So what I kind of do is I just cover up the y and the coefficient of the y, and I just cover it up because it's 0. It's nothing there anymore. And I see that 3x equals negative 15. So that means x must be negative 5. So my x-intercept is negative 5. Now for the y-intercept, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to cover up the x. Because I know in the y-intercept, the x equals 0. So I cover up the x. It equals 0, so it's really not there. So 5y equals negative 15. That means y must be negative 3. So the y-intercept is negative 3. So let's graph those. The x-intercept is negative 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the y-intercept is negative 3. 1, 2, 3. There's the 2 points on the line. So I'm going to grab my ruler, and I am going to draw my line. Ooh, that went pretty far. And there is the line with the equation 3x plus 5y equals 15. So let's do one more of these. And let's give the equation. How about negative 4x minus 3y equals 12. Negative 4x minus 3y equals 12. So let's find our intercepts. We'll start with our x-intercept, and then we'll find our y-intercept. For the x-intercept, we cover up the y's. I've got negative 4x equals positive 12. So that means x has to be negative 3. I divide both sides by negative 4, so x must be negative 3. So the x-intercept is negative 3. Now my y-intercept, I'm going to cover up the x. If negative 3y equals 12, then y must equal to negative 4. Excuse me. So now I'll graph them. The x-intercept is negative 3, so I go along the x-axis at negative 3, 2, 3. And the y-intercept is negative 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 2 points on a line. I get my handy dandy ruler, and I graph. And there we go. Now I'm going to give you another one that I want you to practice, but I'm not going to do it with you. So what I'd like for you to do for Math Workshop is to graph this equation. Let's do 5x minus 2y equals 10. Find the x-intercept and the y-intercept, and then graph that together. Okay? Now that was graphing from intercepts. Now there's a couple of other lines that I want you to look at, and so I'm going to fold this in half to give a little bit more space here so you can see these graphs. And these are just graphing some special equations. The first one I want to graph is y equals 5. That's the equation of a line. Y equals 5. Looks weird. There's no x. So the equation is saying that y equals 5. Whenever I have, when I'm learning these, what I want to do is set up a table of values. Because remember, we cannot do an xy table. And so I want to set up a table of values. Now, I don't have any x's, so I'm just going to make them up. Well, let's start with negative 1. If x is negative 1, what does the equation tell me that y equals? You're right, it says y equals 5. So that means y equals 5. So let's go to 0. If x is 0, what does y equal? Well, then I got to look at the equation. It says that y equals 5. Okay, so I guess y equals 5. Well, let's go for 1. If x equals 1, let's look at the equation. What does it say? It says y equals 5. So even when x is 1, y equals 5. So what this equation is telling me is it doesn't matter what the x value is, the y is always going to be 5. So let's graph that. We go negative 1 and up 5. That's our first point. And then 0, 5 would be right here. And then 1, 5 would be right there. And what kind of line is that? You are exactly right. If, in fact, you said it's a horizontal line. Anytime I have a y equals equation and there's no x involved in the equation, then that means it's a horizontal line on the number that's in the equation. Okay? So, what's the slope of this line? Well, let's find the slope. 5 minus 5 is 0, and negative 1 minus 0 is negative 1. So 5 minus 5 is 0, and 0 minus 1 is negative 1. And then I do change in y over change in x. So m equals 0 over negative 1, which equals 0. So the slope of a horizontal line is actually 0. The number 0. Let's look at another case. Let's say my equation is x equals negative 2. Well, once again, because there's no y involved, I'm just wondering what I'm going to do. I know that x equals negative 2, so again I'm going to create a table of values. So I'll come down to my xy table, and in this case I'm having to choose an x, okay? But I look at the equation and it says x is negative 2. Okay, so I guess I have to put a negative 2 right there. Well, what is y? It doesn't matter. You can pick a y. I'm just going to pick 1. Well, then what's my next point? Well, it says x is negative 2. So I guess x is going to be negative 2 because it says x is negative 2. So then what's my other y? Well, I'll just pick another one. Let's do 5. And then I need one more point because we have 3 lines to draw a graph, so I put another negative 2 because the equation says x must be negative 2. That's what the equation says. If that's what it says, then that's what it is. And then my other y, let's make the y negative 2. So we got negative 2, negative 2. So let's graph this. So I go to negative 2, comma 1, and then negative 2, comma 5, and negative 2, comma negative 2. And what do we have? You're exactly right. We have a vertical line, if that's what you actually said. Draw my line, draw my arrows. Now let's see what the slope is of this. So we do 5 minus 1, or 1 minus 5, it doesn't matter. 5 minus 1 is 4, and then negative 2. So it appears that the video actually cut off because I ran out of storage. So I'm just going to leave this right here and tell you that I finished out and that the slope of the vertical line is undefined because we have 0 in the denominator. And you have that written, or you can keep writing it down there. And then I'm going to ask you to please graph in 2 different colors on this blank one, y equals 2 and x equals 5, and use 2 different colors for them, and then we'll talk about those in Math Workshop. And that's all for this video.